All right, I'm here to discuss, I think, just kind of the overall state of physical game production, physical game collecting, and all that stuff. There's been some interesting news stories that have been popping up the past couple weeks or so, and I just figured why not kind of jump in and give some thoughts. I see a lot of hyperbole about a lot of things. I see a lot of doomer behavior about certain things that I feel like is overstated, and then I see some kind of ignorant takes that I feel like I want to, put some thoughts on. So just one of these more unscripted rambling videos where I discuss my overall thoughts on just a topic. So as far as that goes, I guess the first thing that we're seeing is looks like Xbox is kind of winding down on digital games. I know Walmart's not going to be carrying digital or physical Xbox games any longer. I know there was a story of GameStop was canceling a bunch of like smaller publishers physical games for Xbox, like I guess not being made anymore. And I think this is kind of a natural thing. Xbox is really they're really dead set on kind of not doing much for physical. And I think part of it is when we look at the numbers of the Series X and S, there are many more Series S consoles sold than Series X consoles, and Series S is digital only. So, I mean, there's your answer right there. The market for physical games on the new Xbox consoles is already low, and I don't know. I feel like if you're on Xbox at this point, you're using Game Pass, and you're not probably buying very many games. And if you are, you're not probably buying them physically. So I think like people are acting like this is the end of physical games and everything. Microsoft did shut down. I guess they laid off their physical games. So they like shut down that department is I guess what people are guessing there. And when they announced these new games for some of their games going over to multi-platform, they're doing the physical runs of these games, Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment and all those. They're doing the physical runs of those games through limited run games, which I found really weird. Limited run games is, I'll touch on them in a minute. I think it, not the best partner, not my favorite partner, but I find that really weird just because I don't know why they wouldn't just do these themselves. Especially like they have three publishers essentially in house. They have Activision now, they have Bethesda, and they have Microsoft. All like someone's physical games department could have done these. I don't know why we're doing, especially Hi-Fi Rush is technically Bethesda. All the same thing in the end, but just a weird thing where it's like I don't know why you wouldn't, why you wouldn't just do that. I just why would you not make the physical versions? But Microsoft, I don't know. Some of their Xbox physical releases have been pretty poor lately. I know a lot of them have just been like a license and a just to download the game essentially on the disc. And that's like, I think a misconception we're seeing a lot about a lot of these physical copies. I see a lot of people thinking like, yeah, just there's nothing on the cartridge or there's nothing on the disc, and it's like, well, there's a whole website of games and stuff that are listed that you can play these games, no internet, and they're fully 100% playable. It's called, I think, Does It Play? And there's, stuff like Mario RPG, 100% playable, no, like without needing patches, without, needing to download anything. So obviously you can play things off the cart. Games install from the disc and from the cartridge, but they're not just a license to download something from the from the internet. So I that's one of the big misconceptions I see. But I think Xbox is a big part of the kind of downfall of physical. But and I don't begrudge them. Like they have a different their whole ecosystem is just a lot different than Nintendo and Sony's, and they are the one who've kind of poised themselves to be the least dependent on physical. Where on Nintendo, I think is, all in on physical really. And I don't know, there's something about it. For me personally, I buy everything physical that I can. I just, as a collector and also just, I have like especially with Nintendo, I have a trust thing where I don't trust their online servers. I don't trust that like if my account gets suspended or not even suspended, like if I don't trust that I can transfer these games. I just want the hard copy. You have a Wii U and you bought all the, digital downloads and your Wii U dies or something, and now there's no eShop for the Wii U, like you're just out of luck, I guess. I don't know what to tell you. Like, what do you do there? And that's a genuine question. What do you do there? With something with Sony, I'm like, yeah, okay. So, if I bought all my PS4 games digital, like for example, I didn't. But if I did that, my PS4 dies, I buy a PS5 or buy another PS4, and look, I'm good to go. I can just download all those games again. So, I just don't have as much trust with Nintendo, and I'm sure Nintendo does have like their own little thing going on, and they have a way to do that, but I don't want to figure out. And I do buy digital games, like two of my favorite games last year were digital only. Alan Wake 2 is my favorite game of the last year, and Hi-Fi Rush was one of my favorite games of last year too. And those are digital only games. Hi-Fi Rush not anymore, but those are digital only games. I will buy and play games that are digital only. Just I don't I'm not one of those people who puts a hard line in the sand of like, no, I will not. But as far as all of that goes, like I want to play games, so if it's digital only, it's digital only. But I think it's also important to consider too, and this was solved recently. But I think of like the Ace Attorney games that we didn't get physically for the longest time for 3DS. 5 and 6 we did not get in North America, like the English versions, physically. So those were download only on the 3DS eShop. 3DS eShop closes down, and then we didn't have a way to play those games. If you wanted to get into the series and you were in North America and you hadn't bought them previously, you didn't have a way to play those games for a good chunk of time, really, until the Switch eShop. And I guess there was the mobile versions, but on console at least, there wasn't a way to play those until the games came to PlayStation and Switch and PC and everything. And now we have the Switch physical version, which is like, there we go. Now we got that physical, like that's there, and we have that kind of permanently moving forward. And one of the things I hear a lot is like, well, it's not permanent because you're gonna have disc rot. Everyone tries to make disc rot like it's like this inevitable thing that's crazy, and I really feel like if you take care of your things that you have, your disc rot is not going to be that much of a problem. I have personally not encountered disc rot with anything that in my collection. I have found games that were not treated well that very clearly had some disc rot, like PS1 games and stuff. But these games are also scratched up and kind of destroyed, or they were stored in a garage for 20 years, or, but if you're keeping your games like in a nice temperature controlled area that's not, a shed out in your yard that's freezing cold for half the year and then roasting hot for half the year, like you're probably not going to have too many problems with disc rot. Like I have plenty of Sega CD, Sega Saturn, PlayStation games. No disc rot there. Even someone like my dad has a bunch of CDs from like the 80s and 90s. No, I've never seen disc rot, anything like that. So just kind of something to consider. I always feel like there's so many people, and there's like kind of I don't think this is most people. Like I understand going digital only. I think it's much more convenient, having the game just unlock it, midnight, just having it there, not having to wait, not having to go pick it up at the store, wait for it to get dropped off and everything. Like I can understand not switching discs out or switching cartridges out, having everything kind of on your Switch if you travel a lot or something. I can understand that, but there are some people who are like, yeah, just buy digital, man. You just, all your games are going to get disc rot anyway. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, I have a bunch of NES cartridges. Those are almost 40 years old now. Like those are still playing when I put them in the NES. Like is it possible that these games will one day stop functioning? Like, yeah, I guess so. But I mean, at that point, like, I don't know. I mean, am I going to be 80 years old? Like, I think at 80 years old, I'm probably not going to be like, oh man, my copy of Gyromite doesn't work anymore. No, like so I feel like that's kind of a ridiculous argument as long as you're taking care of your things and not, using them as a coaster or a Frisbee, and you're not storing them in like the Sahara Desert or something. Like, I think you're fine. But that's just kind of a side tangent there. But limited run games, I like what they do, but I feel like that whole limited run, super rare, all those guys, and I have nothing against it personally, but I feel like it's more of just all right, let's, and obviously it's to make money, but I feel like it's like let's get everyone to feel like they're missing out on something. So let's do this. And I think it's really cool how limited run has kind of started just putting stuff in like actual stores. But I don't really like anytime I see something I want and it's through limited run, I'm like, ugh. Like, all right, like we didn't get physical versions of the Persona 3 Portable and Persona 4 Golden ports of the current gen consoles, and I was like, okay, like I finally we get announced these physicals and they're through limited run, which is so weird, but I just like I pre-ordered them I think in like August or September, something like that, and I get the emails saying like, yeah, they're gonna go into production. You might have them in June. It's like, okay. So I bought these and I have to wait a year. And I understand like the idea of they want to come in and fund the next project with the previous project and fund the next game with the previous game and printing and everything. But it's like you guys are a pretty big company and you're they're owned by Embracer Group. They have a huge parent company, not a very good parent company, but a huge parent company. So I don't know. Like I feel like they're just kind of frustrating, and I see other things, and I'm like I just wish we could have this normal be normal. But something interesting too, Limited Run said was that there's not much of an Xbox physical demand for things. Like they said that Persona's been one of their most popular runs that they've ever done, and that there's very little Xbox demand in any way for these physical versions, which I find interesting because I think it just backs up that point a little bit more. Like I don't know, like there's just not much of a physical, and there's niche collectors I'm sure for Xbox, but there's not much of a physical anything for Series X and S, and it makes sense. But I mean, I see we all stepped into a GameStop lately. I mean, they've started taking older stuff and putting older stuff out again because, like, I go into a GameStop in 2023 back then, even last year, and it was dire. Like, there's not used games in the GameStop very much. Like their selection was horrible. It had gone full like Funko Pop. And I think a lot of it is people switch to digital. I mean, we see, I don't remember exact numbers, but like 60% digital in some cases. I know Nintendo's a little bit higher on physical, but you go to a lot of the GameStops near me would have like their PS4, you would think that's their biggest console that they would have. Their PS4 used game selection's like 30 games. And it's like, man, I remember going into GameStop as a kid and there'd be like, 200 Xbox 360 games, 200 Wii games, 200 PS3 games, like a ton of them. And it's just, there's not. And pawn shops is another thing. It's always interesting. You can kind of gauge based off pawn shops, like, what the average person's kind of going into. And they used to have like full racks that were full of games at pawn shops. And now it's like, oh, they got like 10 games here and it's, a couple sports games and not much of anything interesting. And that could just be people are wisening up and not going to pawn shops when they could go to better stores, or, people use Facebook Marketplace or whatever that is. But I really feel like I think a lot of people the more casual people are switching to digital just because it's more convenient. And there's always going to be the people who say, oh, I buy this game at $70 and, I don't want to put too much money into it. So once I, beat the game over the weekend, I go and sell it off to GameStop for $30 and I put it towards my next pre-order, try to get some discounts. There's always going to be the people who want to do that, but that's shrinking. And you got to remember too, game publishers don't care about that person. They don't really want that guy to do that because they're losing a sale at the end of the day. If you have two people who are interested in playing a game, one person buys it new, one person buys it used, you essentially have one person who bought the game versus two people who digitally, bought the game, and both of those copies go to the publisher. So you got to think of it too as publishers probably don't want us to do physical games. Like from a sense, I'm sure every publisher would be thrilled if we went digital only. And that's a big part of it just because they make less money on the physicals. They have to print them, they have to make them, they got to press them, they got to ship them out, they got to have a cut from GameStop, they got to or Target or whoever, so they want to do less of that. And it's just one of these things where if we could get everyone going digital, where there's just, for publishers, 30% cut on each of the stores. And if you're Nintendo or Sony or Microsoft, you get 100% of the profits from selling your game on your own platform. So they don't want that, but I think it's important just for the fact of I will always just like having the stack of games, as a collector too. But I like to be able to see like, all right, this is my PS4 library. This is what I played in this. This is my PS5 library. This is my Switch library, and I like the idea too. Like, my PlayStation Network. If that gets banned or something happens, I still have all my games. Aside for a select few, I still have all my games. So it's one of those things where I like that. I feel like there's no stress to it. So they both have their advantages and disadvantages though, and looking into the future will be interesting. We see Best Buy's phasing out. I don't think they're phasing out gaming physical media, but they got rid of all DVD, Blu-ray, 4Ks. They don't sell physical movies anymore, which I find it strange that people still buy DVDs, but I understand people buying Blu-rays and 4Ks and everything. I just who's this is a side tangent, but who's buying? I want to hear in the comments, a movie that just came out recently or whatever. Just who's going to go to the store and buy that on DVD versus at least Blu-ray or 4K? Like, yeah, I'm going to buy the 480p, version of this from a format that's 25 years old. Like, yeah, this is cool. That always has baffled me, but that's a side tangent. But Walmart's getting rid of their Xbox physical games. I don't know how GameStop still exists, and I can't imagine too much longer. So it'll be interesting to see, but just kind of wanted to discuss a few of these things, discuss, some of those misconceptions I've been seeing, and just kind of overall thoughts. So I don't know if this video is just a rambling mess or if there was anything insightful in there, but if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the physical versus digital debate, and, anything that you find interesting and what you think is going to happen, and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And until next time, I'd like to thank you for watching.